In a world where the earth is shattered and the sky burns like copper, a single cry rises from the wasteland, not the roar of a beast, but the fragile wail of a human baby abandoned to die. Yet destiny twists when the last great dragon hears that cry, and what follows is a tale of survival, fire, and a bond that could change the fate of both humans and dragons forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where are you watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The wasteland stretched endlessly, a broken land of dust and cracked stone. The sky burned a dull copper, and the ground was thirsty for water that had not fallen in years. Silence ruled this place, broken only by the hiss of wind sweeping across the empty plains. In this dead land, nothing soft was meant to survive. Yet on one forgotten outcrop, a sound rose. It was not the howl of a predator, it was the thin cry of a human baby. The infant lay wrapped in scraps of cloth, its face pale and lips cracked from thirst. Each weak breath seemed as though it might be the last. Whoever had left the child here had not meant for it to live. The wasteland was no cradle. It was a graveyard of old wars and ruins, a place where even strong creatures struggled to endure. High above the broken land, wings cut across the burning sky. Solara Flamecrest, the last of the ancient fire dragons, circled her territory. Her scales glowed crimson against the light, a living spark of a time long gone. She was old, older than the wars that had shattered the world, and she carried loneliness like a heavy stone in her heart. She was not seeking company, she was seeking silence. But that fragile sound below caught her attention. With a shadow that stretched across the rocks, Solara descended. Her vast wings folded close as she let her talons dug into the stone, yet her steps were careful, precise. The baby's cry wavered but did not stop. The dragon lowered her massive head, nostrils flaring. The scent was unmistakable, human, fragile, and weak. "Curious," she murmured, her voice rumbling like thunder rolling far away. Who would leave such a helpless creature in death's domain? The infant squirmed beneath her gaze, his tiny hands reaching into the air, as if begging even the wasteland itself to hold him. Solara's golden eyes narrowed. She remembered the humans who once hunted dragons for blood and scales, believing them to hold power. She remembered her own hatchlings, taken before they could grow. Her instinct told her to turn away, to let the desert claim what was already fading. Dragons did not care for human affairs, yet something stirred. Perhaps it was the echo of her lost children. Perhaps it was the simple strangeness of seeing life in a place where death had conquered all. Solara lowered one claw, the size of a tree trunk, yet she moved with surprising delicacy. She touched the cloth near the baby and felt the warmth of his small body. The baby's cry weakened, a rasp of sound, nearly swallowed by the wind. His chest rose and fell with difficulty. Solara hesitated. She could let him fade, and none would know. But for reasons she could not name, she lifted him gently in her claws. The air roared as her wings opened wide. With a single beat, the dragon took to the skies, carrying the infant away from the outcrop and toward the jagged mountains at the wasteland's edge. Below, dust rose in spirals as her shadow crossed the land. Her cave was ancient, carved by dragons long before humans had claimed the earth. The tunnels stretched deep, cool and dark, away from the burning sky. Solara laid the child on a bed of soft ash where she herself rested. The infant stirred, his eyes wide, his breath shallow. "Hungry," Solara muttered, studying him. She had no food for humans. No milk, no herbs. She considered leaving him here, letting the dark claim him gently. But her body still produced dragon milk, the powerful fluid meant to feed hatchlings that would never be born. Thick and pearlescent, it carried not only nourishment, but the magic of dragons. "This will either save you or destroy you," she whispered. Her talon dipped into the fluid she drew carefully into a shallow stone dish. She touched the liquid to the baby's lips. To her surprise, the infant latched eagerly, weak hands reaching toward her claw. He drank, and where moments ago death had seemed near, color returned to his cheeks. The cry that followed was no longer a fading wail, but a demand. Solara tilted her head, watching. "Interesting," she said softly. "Very interesting." Time slowed as she fed him more. Each swallow seemed to push back the grip of the wasteland. The boy grew louder, stronger, and she could almost feel the thrum of life returning. When the child finally drifted into sleep, Solara studied him in silence. His face was small and fragile, yet his will to live had surprised her. She curled around the ash bed, her wings folding protectively. "You may still die," she told him, her voice low and rough, "but not today." Outside, the wasteland howled with endless wind. But inside the cavern, for the first time in centuries, Solara felt something she had not known since her own hatchlings were taken. It was not hope, not yet, but it was the spark of something that might become more. The baby, abandoned to die, now breathed steady in the heart of the last dragon's home. The story of survival had only begun, and the wasteland, long silent, now held a secret that could change its fate forever. Days turned into weeks, and weeks stretched into months. The baby who had been left to die in the wasteland now lived within the ancient caves of Solara Flamecrest, the last of the fire dragons. He had expected him to fade away, but instead he grew stronger with each passing day. The dragon milk had done more than keep him alive. It had changed him in ways even Solara could not fully understand. The boy was given a name. Solara called him Kirin, after the ash-gray bed where he slept. His eyes, once a pale blue, shifted to a stormy silver that shimmered when light touched them. His dark hair grew wild and thick, with streaks of crimson that mirrored Solara's scales. He was still human, yet something about him felt different, as if the wasteland itself had claimed him and the dragon had shaped him anew. By the time Kirin could walk, he wandered the great caverns with fearless curiosity. The stone walls echoed with his small footsteps as he explored corners even Solara had long forgotten. The dragon watched him closely, her golden eyes tracking his every move. Though she told herself this was mere curiosity, she knew in her ancient heart that the boy had become her companion. Kirin's strength revealed itself early. He lifted stones that should have been far too heavy for a child his size. He could climb the steep cave walls with little effort, his hands gripping the rock with unusual power. When he fell, which he often did, he would rise again quickly, bruises fading faster than Solara had ever seen in a human. Dragon milk builds dragon strength, Solara told him one day as he balanced a boulder on his small shoulders. Kirin laughed, the sound echoing through the caves. "You are becoming something new, little one. Not fully human, not fully dragon, but something in between." As the years passed, Solara taught Kirin about survival in the wasteland. She showed him how to read the clouds, to guess when the storms would strike. She taught him to recognize the stubborn plants that clung to life in cracks of stone. Plants that could be eaten when hunger pressed hard. She pointed out the shadows of predators that stalked the dunes and explained how to avoid them. Sometimes she carried him across the wasteland, held carefully in her great claws. From the sky, Kieran saw the endless cracked earth stretch to the horizon. He learned to spot the glimmer of water hidden in deep pits and the winding paths of rivers long dried. "Why is the land broken?" he asked once, his silver eyes wide with wonder as they soared over the barren fields. "Humans broke it," Solara answered, her voice like fire rolling in her chest. "They waged wars and burned the earth. They hunted dragons too, until only a few of us remained. This wasteland is the price of their greed." Kieran listened in silence. Though he was only a child, her words planted deep questions in his heart. He began to wonder why he had been left alone in such a place. Who were the people that abandoned him, and why had they done so? As he grew, the changes within him became more visible. When the sun struck his skin at certain angles, faint patterns like scales shimmered across his arms. His eyes could see clearly in the dark caves, catching every glint of light. His sense of smell sharpened, and he could tell when a storm was coming by the taste of the air. By the time he reached his 5th year, Kieran was not just surviving. He was thriving. His body carried the strength of dragons, and his mind carried the endless curiosity of a child. He asked questions that Solara often struggled to answer. "Why don't we see other people?" he asked one evening as the sun bled red across the horizon. "Are there others like me?" Solara hesitated. "There are other humans. They live in settlements beyond the wasteland, but they are not like you, Kieran. You are unique because you were raised with a dragon, because you drink what no other human has tasted." The boy nodded, but the answer only deepened his thoughts. He often dreamed of faces like his own. Imagine voices that were not made of thunder and flame. Yet he also knew he owed his life to Solara, who guarded him fiercely. Still, shadows began to move at the edges of their territory. Scavengers wandered closer, their shapes small against the horizon. They carried weapons made of rusted metal, and their movements spoke of desperation. Solara sensed them before Kieran did, her wings rising to shield the cave entrance. "You must stay hidden," she told him firmly. "Humans will not understand what you are. They will fear you, or worse, they will try to use you." Kieran's heart pounded at her words. He wanted to see these people, wanted to know where he had come from, but the fear in Solara's voice kept him still. That night, as the fire crackled in the cave and shadows flickered across the walls, Kieran lay awake. His silver eyes glowed faintly in the dark. He was different. He knew that much. He was human by birth, but shaped by dragon fire and dragon milk. ... He whispered to himself, "Who am I really?" The question hung in the stillness of the cave, unanswered. Beyond the mountains, the wasteland waited. Beyond the wasteland, other humans lived. But Kieran's path was uncertain. He was the child of ash and flame, and his story was only beginning. The years passed, and Kieran grew from a curious child into a strong and restless youth. His body carried both human softness and dragon strength. He could climb cliffs faster than mountain goats, run long across the cracked plains, and heal from wounds in a fraction of the time a normal human would. Yet despite these gifts, his heart carried questions. Who had left him in the wasteland? Why did Solara fear humans so deeply? And was there a place in the world for someone like him? Those questions hung in his mind when the first group of strangers entered their territory. Solara sensed them before Kieran ever saw them. Goo. She smelled their presence on the wind and heard the distant clatter of metal long before they appeared on the horizon. Humans are near, she told Kieran, her voice low and heavy. You must stay hidden in the caves. Do not make a sound. Kieran pressed himself into a narrow crevice, his heart pounding. From there, he watched as figures came into view. There were 5 of them, worn thin from hunger and thirst, dressed in patchwork armor made from scavenged metal. Their faces were covered with cloth masks against the dust, and their weapons were crude spears and rusted blades. One of them carried a battered gun that looked ready to fall apart. The leader was a tall man named Darren. His eyes, sharp and desperate, scanned the land as if searching for something more than water. The group halted near the entrance of Solara's cavern, their posture wary but determined. Dragon, Darren called out, his voice cracked but strong. We know you are here. We seek only water and shelter. Solara stepped into view, her wings unfolding to block the cave entrance. Her scales blazed like embers in the dim light, and her size dwarfed the scavengers. This territory is mine, she rumbled. Turn back before I lose patience. Please, a woman in the group cried, her voice muffled by her mask. We have no home. Our settlement was destroyed. Our children are dying. Solara's eyes narrowed, glowing like molten gold. Your kind destroyed the world. Your suffering is your own making. Darren stepped forward, lifting his weapon. We've heard stories, he said boldly. They say dragon blood can heal sickness. They say your scales can clean poisoned water. If the stories are true, then you can save us. From his hiding place, Kieran held his breath. The scavengers' voices trembled with both fear and determination. He could sense their desperation as clearly as he could sense Solara's rising anger. Those are myths. Solara growled, Leave now. But Darren's eyes burned with stubborn hope. Just a little blood. Enough to save our children, he begged, raising the broken gun. The shot rang out. The sound echoed through the cavern like thunder. The bullet grazed Solara's neck, drawing a streak of bright red against her crimson scales. Her roar shook the wasteland. Fire surged from her throat, engulfing Darren in a storm of flame. His scream was cut short as he turned to ash before the others' eyes. Panic broke the group. They tried to scatter, but Solara was faster. With a swipe of her talons, she crushed 2 of them, their cries fading into silence. The remaining pair fled into the wasteland, their figures shrinking until the horizon swallowed them whole. When the echoes of fire and death faded, Kieran stepped trembling from his hiding place. His silver eyes were wide, his chest tight with fear and confusion. You killed them, he whispered, his voice shaking. Solara lowered her head, her breathing heavy. The wound on her neck was already steaming, beginning to close. They would have killed me, she said. They would have drained me until nothing remained. Their desperation leaves no room for mercy. Kieran stared at the scorched ground where the men had fallen. The smell of smoke and burned flesh clung to the air. He wanted to believe Solara, yet the memory of the woman's pleading voice haunted him. She had spoken of children, of people who needed help. That night, Kieran could not sleep. The images returned again and again. The fire, the screams, the silence after. He curled against the ash bed, torn between his loyalty to Solara and his growing questions about humanity. If humans are so cruel, he asked the next morning, his voice low, why am I different? I am human too. Solara studied him with tired eyes. You were raised differently. You were given dragon strength, dragon values. That is why you are not like them. But the answer did not ease Kieran's heart. He could feel the pull of both worlds inside him, dragging him in opposite directions. He longed to know where he came from, to see others like himself. Yet he feared what might happen if those humans ever saw what he had become. The days that followed were filled with tension. Word of Solara's presence spread across the wasteland. More scavengers appeared at a distance, watching from the edges of her territory. Some came with weapons, others with empty hands and desperate eyes. Solara kept them away, her wings casting vast shadows across the land. For Kieran, the world had grown larger. He could no longer ignore the truth that there were other humans beyond the mountains, humans who might hate him, or fear him, or perhaps need him. He was no longer just a child of the cave. He was a child of ash and flame, and he felt the weight of what that meant. As the sun set one evening, painting the wasteland in colors of fire and blood, Kieran stood at the cave's entrance. His silver eyes reflected the glow, his heart heavy with questions. "One day," he whispered, "I will find out who I am." Solara listened in silence, her massive form behind him. She knew that day would come, and when it did, the clash between human and dragon, survival and trust, would decide more than just their fate. It would decide the fate of the broken world. Kieran's 12th year marked a turning point. His body carried more than human traits. Faint scales shimmered across his skin when sunlight touched him. His eyes glowed with silver fire in the dark. His wounds closed quickly, steaming before they sealed. And when anger boiled inside him, small wisps of smoke escaped from his lips. He was no longer only human, nor entirely dragon. He was something new, a living bond between two worlds. Solara Flamecrest watched his growth with pride and unease. She knew he was powerful, perhaps more than she could predict. But she also knew he longed for answers, for human voices beyond the cave. Every question he asked about his origin, every glance he cast at the horizon, reminded her that the wasteland could not contain him forever. The chance came when smoke rose from a distant valley. Kieran begged Solara to take him closer. She resisted at first, but his determination wore her down. Together they soared above the cracked land until they found a settlement, unlike the scavenger camps they had seen before. The village was called Haven Reach. It was small but strong, with gardens under protective domes, a working water system, and homes built from stone and steel. Children played in the dust, while watchmen stood guard at the gates. The sight filled Kieran with wonder. "They are rebuilding," he whispered. "They are trying to make something better." Solara remained cautious. "Appearances can hide danger," she warned. "Do not forget what others have done." Before they could retreat, the people saw them. Alarms rang out, and villagers poured into the open. Weapons were raised, but no attack came. Instead, a woman stepped forward. Her name was Mira Alden, the leader of Havenreach. Her voice carried across the valley. "Dragon, we mean no harm. We wish to speak." Kieran's heart leapt. "They want to talk," he said. "This could be our chance." Solara's wings tightened, her suspicion sharp. It could also be a trap. But she could feel his resolve, and for the first time in centuries, her curiosity matched his. They landed at a safe distance, and Kieran walked toward the gates alone. The people stared as he approached, their eyes lingering on his unusual features, the shimmer of faint scales, the streak of crimson in his hair, and the silver fire in his gaze. Whispers filled the air. Mira Alden stepped forward, her weathered face lined by both hardship and hope. "Who are you?" she asked. Kieran drew himself tall. "My name is Kieran," he said firmly. "I was left to die in the wasteland, But Solara Flamecrest, last of the fire dragons, raised me. I am living proof that humans and dragons do not have to be enemies. The Council of Havenreach gathered. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with suspicion. One man, a scientist named Oren Hale, leaned forward eagerly. "You are changed," he said. "The dragon milk gave you power. If we could understand it, we might save countless lives." Kieran's silver eyes hardened. "I did not come here to be studied. I came to offer peace. Dragons are not monsters. They have gifts that could help us heal this broken world. Fire to purify water, scales to shield against poison, blood that carries strength. But these things must be given freely, not stolen." Mira listened carefully. "And what do you ask in return?" "Protection," Kieran said. "Safety for Solara. An agreement that no human will hunt her again. In exchange, she will share what she can to help your people survive." The council murmured among themselves. Some called it foolishness. Others saw possibility. Finally, Mira raised her hand. "Perhaps trust must start somewhere. We will meet your dragon, but only if she chooses to come without force." The next days were filled with tension. Solara was wary, but Kieran's resolve did not break. At last she agreed. "You have my strength," she told him. "If this fails, we will leave forever." On the appointed day, they met in the open plain between the mountains and Havenreach. The villagers gathered, their fear thick in the air, as Solara descended from the skies. Her vast shadow fell across the land, her golden eyes blazing. "I come at Kieran's request," she said, her voice shaking the ground. "He believes peace is possible. I remain unconvinced." Mira stepped forward with steady courage. "We share his hoe. If dragons and humans can work together, perhaps the wasteland may one day heal." The talks were long and uneasy. Promises were offered and tested. Solara agreed to give a small amount of her scales for water purification, and to use her fire to cleanse soil poisoned by old wars. In return, Havenreach swore to protect her from hunters and to teach their children that dragons were not to be feared, but respected. As the sun sank low, a fragile accord was born. It was not full trust, not yet. But it was a beginning. Kieran stood between Solara and the humans, feeling the weight of the moment. He was neither fully dragon nor fully human, but something entirely new. And in that truth lay his strength. Mira placed a hand on her chest. "Then let this be the first step," she said. "Not for us alone, but for all who will come after." Kieran reached into his cloak and drew out a shard of Solara's glowing scale. He placed a reminder that survival comes not from fear, but from unity. The people of Havenreach bowed their heads in silence. Solara lowered her wings, watching her foster son with pride. For the first time in centuries, the wasteland felt less empty. That night, as stars filled the broken sky, Kieran whispered to himself, "The story is not over. It is only beginning." The human abandoned in the wasteland had become the bridge of two worlds. And through him, hope burned brighter than the endless deserts.